I'm so excited to speak to all of you today. I wish I could see all of your faces, but I am delighted to present this exhibition to you, and some of you may have already been able to visit. So I'll give you an overview and some information about how you can learn more, and then I hope you'll be able to visit in person, but here we go. So it all seems very long ago now, but we began planning the New Jersey Arts Annual ReVision and Respond last, say, October, November of 2020. We had been discussing it even earlier, but we started meeting with the team, the curatorial, learning and engagement, exhibitions, as well as Kristen Owens, our juror. She and I juried the exhibition together, and she is the associate curator of programs at the Rutgers University Newark Paul Robeson Galleries at Express Newark, just down the street, several blocks from the museum. And so Kristen joined in as we all started to talk about the themes, because many of you know that the New Jersey Arts Annual is an annual juried exhibition that is sponsored by the New Jersey State Council on the Arts. Going back 50 years, a little bit more, they started in 1967, but we really thought it was so important that the artists were taking in all the experiences from around them, and really revisioning the world and then offering their artwork as a response. So we were fortunate to have so many works to choose from. And in the end, we selected 45 artists and 50 works. So several of the artists have multiple works. We looked at the artist statements, which formed the label copy and also the catalog copy. And we started to see what themes that the artists were writing about, and obviously their work. And so the major themes were about the pandemic and about social and racial injustice and identity. And so we loosely grouped them by the works by the larger themes, but most of the artworks could fall under almost any of the sections. So there's not a tight distinction, and so when you enter to the right of the wall with the map, there's a section that focuses on loss, solace, and isolation, which all of you having experienced the last year and a half, it's very familiar. And so for many of the artists, there were these issues and dealing with, the trauma of being isolated. And here we have Anthony Alvarez, a Newark artist, with his COVID triptych. And he speaks of, the difficulty of having connections with people, both with the gloves and the masks. It seems very far away now, the early stages of the shutdown, and also just this sense of loss with the empty chair. And he works mainly in self-portraiture, so really placing him in this position for the viewer to address these ideas. And so I could spend an hour on every work, so I'll keep us moving along. In the same section, we have another work, and this also gives you a sense. We have a wide variety of media, lots of two-dimensional works, paintings, collage, found object collage. This is one work that's in glass. Nancy Cohen works in glass, and it has metal and other material embedded in it. And it's a little hard to see here, but they kind of shape almost the forms of wings. The glass curls around and outward. And she speaks of, looking up at the sky during the quarantine, and this sense of desiring freedom and envying the birds and the birds in flight. Whereas with so many of us in quarantine, if we were fortunate enough to have a park or an outdoor space, but really that sense of that idea of wishing to be able to move freely. And so this is really powerful with the light coming through the glass in the gallery. Some of the artists were really focusing on trying to find not necessarily joy, but pleasure, or the anything positive to come out of it. So we have a sculpture in the foreground by Tom Neubaum. So according to his description, this is something, a slightly new format. He's colorful epoxies on metal to create that playful, energetic sculpture with the coronavirus motifs. And then we have Irmari Nacht on the right in the pedestal case, where she takes books and cuts them and splices them. So on the other side, when you come to the gallery or look in the catalog, there are tendrils also influenced by the coronavirus itself, but really trying to process the isolation, the fear. And in the background, you can see Lauren Krasnoff, an oil painting called No Diving. And in the catalog, and again in the gallery, you'll see it more clearly, but it's all these people in or near their kiddie pools. So obviously you cannot dive in a kiddie pool, and the sense of a group of people, but socially distanced. So, and it is interesting, and I'll be interested to hear from all of you when you're in the gallery. Some of these images seem very, still present, but some of the artworks really speak to the trauma and the fear and the real intense isolation many, if not all of us, felt at the beginning of the pandemic. And already now we've moved away from that, at least locally. And I believe Kristen, the co-juror, wrote about it in her statement in the catalog, the sense that this artwork is a snapshot. And already between January, when the selections were made, to now, we're already looking backwards in some ways, very positively. So if you see the bluish painting with the white streak in the background, that is Shin Young An, and it's called Whitewashing. And this is one of the few works created in 2019. And she has a newspaper collage with themes of global warming, environmental issues, and then she paints, and I'm not letting, you can't see it here, but when you see the catalog or the exhibition, paints many tiny bubbles, and then she paints the hand smearing it away, kind of talking about the issues and looking deeper. And so with all the hand washing of the pandemic, the bubbles really become even more powerful. So then you can see the Shin Young An painting in the far back right, just to give you, so now we're coming around to the larger portion of the gallery, in from the street in Washington Park. And so many of those works from Shin Young An around to the far back corner are talking about connections. And again, you could take any of these larger ideas and apply them to any, but if you notice that colorful yellow and white draped textile work in the back left corner, I'll speak about it. But before I do that, I just want to point out right center front is Dong Kyu Kim, and it is the most famous stripes, #2. And he works in, there's a clothing company called Supreme, and it's one of those very collectible contemporary brands. They make t-shirts, sneakers, and there's a whole subculture community of people who buy the garments as soon as they're released and then resell them. So there's this whole separate fashion culture, but he took the waistband from men's underwear to create this textile work, and thinking about, with all of the political and social conversations of the last several years, a comment. We did have quite a few flag imagery submissions, but this was one of the more powerful, really, again, taking the idea of a flag, taking the idea of materials to a whole nother level. And so here, this is the Quasiquart that you could see in the far back left, and there are quite a few of the works talk about identity, making cross-cultural connections between people. And so Kwasi is an immigrant, lives in Newark, and in his artist statement speaks about using fabric as a way to describe his interactions with people of different backgrounds, this whole idea of living in a multicultural society. So there's West African kente cloth. He also uses Japanese cloth and all sorts of different textiles, and then creates these kind of wall hangings. And so just a physical manifestation of cross-cultural experiences and his personal experiences. And he has a studio in Newark and speaks about really physical work of dyeing the fabric and then stitching them together. So this is, we're in the back corner where we were just looking. So now you can see the Dong Kyu Kim work looking the other way. So we have a number of textile works. In the foreground, the blue and white is Joan Diamond's Enduring. And she was speaking about kind of environmental issues, and she used Wall Street Journal newspaper bags as well as pieces of old quilts, and this idea of what do people treasure. People save quilts no matter how worn for years, for generations, as an heirloom, whereas newspaper bags are throwaway, but they last for hundreds of years. So, and the light coming through it makes a beautiful pattern on the floor. So just visually, it's fascinating, kind of very abstract geometric, but also the materials and the ideas embedded in it. But on the far wall, you can see a number of works, and many of these deal with issues of racial and social injustice, and the artist personally grappling with these issues. And so my next the next work is partially obscured by the Joan Diamond Enduring, but this is Antoinette Ellis Williams, Newark artist also, and it's a found object collage, tethered, and she is really working with all of the layers of her personal experience, being a Black woman, having been a Black girl, being an immigrant, a mother, a worker, a human being, and really addressing some of the harmful experience she's had and all the different emotions of, great anger, sadness, fury, but also joy. And she talks about the joyfulness of being a girl, being a Black girl, and the idea of jump rope being a way that Black girls can, establish their own space and their own community, but always, in the background of how other people and the larger society are seeing them. So, and everything I'm saying really comes out of their statements, but all of these, the artists put so much emotion in each of their work, and often a range of both, powerfully negative emotions, powerfully positive emotions, and you really feel them. And Kristen and I were speaking in the gallery last week that, we had felt that energy coming off the screen the way you're seeing them now, but to see them in the gallery, they're even more powerful. And we're so delighted, having, gone out on a leap of faith for all these works, not seeing them in person until about a month ago when they were delivered. Just really, they're so powerful and so strong, and all of that energy really radiates when you see them in the gallery. And we were noticing how the works speak to each other as well. And I do want to credit Tim Wintenberg, our exhibition designer, who's so thoughtfully hung the exhibition and concentrated on the lighting as well. So we're coming back. This is the back side of that introductory wall. And again, this is the idea of identity and representation and self-representation. So we have a variety of works here. And I do want to mention also that we chose those words that you can see not very sharply, but above the artwork. So we chose 10 words that we're repeating throughout all, and this one is identity in Spanish and English. And so every word that's on the wall is in English and Spanish. And so this idea of identity and how the artist feels their community, their culture has been represented in the past, and how they as artists are representing themselves and their own community now in the present. And so here we have Karen King Choi, Mount Rushmore, Nieces and Nephews, and she speaks about her family left China under Mao, so to escape the communist totalitarian government, and but that she was very strongly influenced by all those communist propaganda posters, and yet at the same time coming to this country and feeling, on the outside, other, and how were Chinese Americans and Asian Americans portrayed in our culture through the media and the press and however popular culture over time. And so she's taking the format and the coloring of those communist propaganda posters, but also using Mount Rushmore. And so putting her nieces and nephews' faces in the Mount Rushmore format, and just really creating, this joyful, thoughtful image. And what you can get a sense of, but it again, there's three-dimensionality to this, because she took sticker paper and all of her drawing with the marker and the crayon are on stickers that she cut. So there's layers of stickers and they slightly curl outward. And so like the boy's mouth with the teeth, and even the sky and their clothing and their faces, there's a three-dimensionality that doesn't come through here. So you must come to the exhibition. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say, because it's very powerful here, but it's even more powerful in person. And she even left the grid, she marked out a grid, and so you can see the grid on the outer border, which she has left for the installation. So you really get a sense of the process as well. And so here's just another angle. On the far left is more works. We have this wonderful eye chart by Jingzhu, and it's a poster, and it has you'll have to come see it or look it in the catalog, but it's 2020 vision. So the 2020 line is and all the words above are dishonesty, all sorts of negative words, and then below 2020 is, I believe, justice. I don't have it exactly memorized, but the more positive words are underneath. And we have a ceramic work, and there are several others out of the view of the camera. But we wanted an open space so that, again, that these different sections are, you can still see them from across the room, and all those different themes can come out with the space. And the other thought was that we move those words, those kind of thematic words, very high on the wall. We didn't want the visitor to feel, okay, now I'm at inspiration and everything must be inspired, but more they're the ideas kind of floating out of the artwork and the artist's vision. So they're the ideas floating around the gallery. We wanted an interactive activity for visitors, and a way that, because there, as I keep saying, there's so much emotion in the works themselves, but all the visitors have experienced many of the same, maybe not identically, different backgrounds, different demographics, but all the visitors, all of you, have experienced some of the emotions and experiences that are shown through the artwork here. And we wanted the visitor to have a way to process their own emotions, and maybe seeing these artworks are a catalyst for thinking about what you've been through, and how you've seen it, how you haven't seen it, new perspectives, familiar perspectives. And so our learning and engagement team had developed a QR code for each artwork, and you can scan it with your phone or go home and do it on a computer. And there are 5 emojis, and so you can choose the emoji that has the closest response to how you're feeling about that artwork. You could go back and change it, different moments, different feelings and responses. And so in that small room, we have a projection with a leaderboard showing which artworks are getting which responses for the various emojis. And we're not voting, there's no best here, they're all wonderful. So it's really trying to record and show for the visitor the number of variety of emotions and how other people have responded to these artworks.